It's Dr. Alay. Today in HKR 2515, we're going to speak about understanding leisure with social psychology. You won't be seeing my face all the time on these lectures, as it does make the files quite large, so it's probably better for you to have the least going on. So in this course, we're going to really be thinking about what lifestyle is. What makes you happy? What contributes to quality of life? What contributes to lifestyle? I want you to take a few moments and think about what are terms or phrases that you associate with the word lifestyle. There are many factors that impact someone's lifestyle. Things that students commonly bring up are food and clothes, the entertainment, that you watch, like movies or books, your leisure and recreation. Your lifestyle is impacted by the type of work you have, your family, including, if you're single or in a partnership, if you have children, if you're living close to your extended family or not, the type of housing that you live in, as well as the environment. And I mean, like if you're in rural or an urban environment, the city, as well as the social culture of that area, and also social participation. If you engage in certain volunteer activities, if you go to church, what type of sports and recreation you like. These are all a part of our lifestyle. So, lifestyle then is defined by Veal as a total way of living. And it's also about juggling and balancing the demands in daily life. And obviously that changes depending on the country or society that you live in. So it's impacted by cultural factors. And it's also influenced by, when you were born, the cohort that you grew up in. Your lifestyle growing up as children was in, probably the 90s. It was very different from mine growing up in the 70s, and that impacted our lifestyles. So lifestyle can impact a lot of things. It determines our health, our happiness. It's about a juggling of and balance between work, family, and leisure. And so it's really the way that we live, how we live it, what we do, that really impacts our quality of life. In this course, we're going to be really focusing on people watching as a science. For example, that's one of my favorite things to do is, especially at the airport, is to watch people and think about what they're doing and what they're thinking. Where do they come from? In academics, we really have two types of sciences. And the School of Human Kinetics and Recreation also really represents two types of sciences. We have the physical sciences, so that's things like physics and chemistry, biology and medicine. I would put exercise science and kinesiology as a physical science. But also in HKR, we have social sciences like recreation, physical education, therapeutic recreation. And those then are similar to the other disciplines that they've really come from, such as psychology, sociology, and anthropology. These different types of science, physical or social science, have different approaches to the same question. For example, if we ask, what are the benefits of physical activity? Well, in the School of Human Kinetics and Recreation, my colleagues such as Dr. Boehm, Dr. Bassett, Dr. Byrne would be looking at things like VO2 max, vascular dilation, improved muscle strength, things that are objective, that can be measured objectively with certain standards, and often with special instruments. In social science, which this course is, and I'm a social scientist, we would look at other benefits. We would look at reduced depression. We would look at that physical activity increases quality of life. It increases self-esteem and gives you greater positive affect, better mood, greater positive moods. So in this course, we are looking at the social science perspective to leisure, recreation, sport, and physical activity. I'm sure you guys have heard maybe the term armchair psychologist or armchair coach. People who aren't trained in these things but want to provide some psychological advice or, coaching advice. So we know that all of us can watch humans. It is human nature to observe and learn from watching people. So many of us often observe human behavior all the time. What I want you to do next is we're going to watch a video of people having leisure, recreation. Get a piece of paper, and I want you to write down a few words or phrases as an armchair social psychologist of the human behavior that you see in this video clip. The clip is only just over 1 minute long.
People have forgotten what tonight, but not here.
On the street, you cannot hide behind the rest call. And your feet have to do all the talking.
Here, rivers are king. Dive, as Rodin speaks.
So, many of you probably wrote things down like you saw the guys having fun, or they're playing soccer, or, they're, teasing each other and that sort of thing. What I see as a social scientist in that clip is I see leisure building community. These guys are obviously all from the same neighborhood, probably. They're coming together and just having fun. You can also see personality traits. For example, many of these people are showing personality traits for seeking competition. There's obviously opportunities for socialization and getting to know each other and maintaining friendships. You can see that they're motivated by skill development and being with their friends and the competition. You can just see the motives that they're seeking in here. I also, when I look at this, I see the ability to create leisure opportunities in unconventional settings. This is not, it doesn't appear to be like a formal park or anything. It looks like it's under a road and there's just some concrete underneath, and they've brought balls and soccer nets, and they were told wear your green shirt or your blue shirt and come and have the game. So in this course, you're going to learn the perspective of the social scientist. who attempts to provide a clear and objective picture of human behavior. Looking at human behavior in leisure settings and in leisure behavior can tell us a lot about humans. Researchers who make a profession out of people watching, what people do in their leisure, may tell social psychologists more about them as people, their innermost feelings, attitudes, beliefs, and personality characteristics than what they do in any other context. Leisure is fertile ground for learning more about people as well as ourselves. And just think about when you're trying to get to know someone. Do we, going on dates, do we go to, the filing cabinet at work and file papers? No, we go into leisure and recreation settings in order to learn more about a person. I often have international students ask me, why is it that in Canada people always say, "What do you do?" Meaning that we often look at ourselves as defined by our jobs or our roles. But wouldn't it be better to ask people, what do you do in your leisure? What do you do in your free time? What do you do for fun? That would tell us a lot more about an individual. So leisure is very important to study. First, it fosters quality of community and individual life. Leisure is seen as an effective way of fostering the quality of community and individual life through recreation, culture, and heritage activities. And this is through childhood to old age. Leisure is also important for promoting healthy lifestyles and activities. In fact, leisure can be singled out as one of the most important vehicles for promoting healthy lifestyles and activity. For example, in this course, we're going to learn how to get people to be socially and physically active and engaged in their community. Why is it then if, for example, we all know, all of us who are in this course really are caring about people being, healthy. And yet we know that there are many people who do not do physical activity. In this course, we're learning then the social psychological theories of how to get people to lead healthy lifestyles, and that includes physical as well as social health. We also need to look at leisure from a theoretical perspective because leisure is big business. Think about, maybe this past weekend or the last long weekend. How much money did you spend on leisure? When you add up, let's say you have special running shoes or the movie tickets or going out to restaurants or, beverages for the party. These are all leisure activities. And especially in young adulthood, we often spend a lot of money actually on our recreation and leisure. So we need skilled professionals and practitioners to plan, develop, and manage these different service systems, whether that be in clinical settings, like in the hospital, in rehab settings, or in our communities, like community recreation. So in social psychology of leisure, what we're looking at is then how individuals, groups, and society can plan, organize, and use resources for leisure in order to promote health and quality of life. Leisure services has become psychologized, as Manel, your textbook author, has described it. So that means that recreation providers are concerned with the quality of experiences, not just providing them, but quality, in order to provide good services and within various activities and settings that they manage. So many leisure providers, especially in the private sector, really use these theories and rules of thumb. For example, people in the amusement park industry use the theories that you will learn in this course in order to plan and design their parks. And it is for-profit organizations, so people that make money, have used these types of theories for a long time. For example, when I was doing my PhD and taking social psychology courses, there was people like me who were there for health, but the other half of the class, they were from business, marketing, or economics. The theories that you used in this class are also applied to for-profit industries, to advertisement, and if you really look at your day-to-day interactions, you're influenced by these all the time. In this class, though, we're going to use social psychology for good and to make people healthy. So, social psychology of leisure, then, is interested in studying individual and group leisure behavior as a function of social and cultural factors. It's also interested in looking at how to plan and manage like natural or built resources in order for people to use in their free time. And this includes, things for physical activity. And there's also obviously policy and management issues associated with this. And social psychology then can be applied to many aspects of recreation and physical activity delivery, including the planning, the facilitation of the experience, and it can be used, to increase the number of participants you have. So social psychology of leisure is really focused on two sources for the explanation of what leisure is, behavior and experience. We first look at leisure experience, so what one feels. So in this class, we're talking about perceptions, feelings, emotions, attitudes, needs, personality, and how that influences an experience. Everyone can have leisure, but whether it's a quality leisure experience really depends on how one feels. We are also going to look at leisure behavior, what one does. So the types of activities that people participate in, as well as, things like frequency. And we're going to be looking then at two sources for the explanation of behavior and experience. We're looking at first psychological disposition, so what's in someone's head, their perceptions, feelings, emotions, all that. And we also look at situational influences. This is things like the social environment, the physical environment, the group norms, including social influences like media. So in this course, we're really looking at the social side and the psychological side together. So, of course, we need to know what leisure is. And leisure scholars actually debate all the time about what leisure is. But I like to look at it this way. That leisure can be viewed as, for example, something that someone does in their free time. That's often what we think of it as discretionary time. So how much time do you spend in in activities that are not about employment or self-care or, household activities? We also look at the type of activity. So usually, recreation and leisure could be viewed as rest or idleness, but we also look at other types, such as sports, games, hobbies, art, and socialization. In this course, we're not just focused on physical activity. We are looking at volunteer participation, social interactions, friendships, family bonding. We generally also look at leisure as having positive benefits. So, feeling personal growth, self-efficacy. But as I'll discuss in a moment, there can still be a lot of problems in leisure, and recreation and leisure and physical activity can have negative outcomes for individuals. Leisure is also freely chosen, and as you'll learn, that's really at the core of what leisure is. It's something that you have done voluntary and not due to outside pressures. So it's very connected to freedom of choice and intrinsic motivation. For example, when I was a child, my parents made me, I will use the word made, me go curling. And at the time, I did not like curling. It was not freely chosen. I did not find it enjoyable. So I did not find that to be leisure. It was not leisure to me. It might have been a activity, a recreation or sport activity, but it was not leisure. So enjoyment is very important. Leisure, at the heart of leisure, is also not just freedom of choice and intrinsic motivation, but feelings of satisfaction, fun, excitement, awe, and belonging. So in this course, we're really then looking at the different ways of looking at leisure and not just focusing on it as being an activity, and especially not focusing on it being just as narrow as a physical activity. In this course, and in Social Psychology of Leisure, we really look at leisure from an objective versus subjective definition. And we'll be learning more about this in the next couple of lectures. But objectively means that the judgment is made by the researcher or is the result of a societal or group consensus. So, for example, if I said to you, is soccer, swimming, going to the movies, etc., are those leisure activities? All of you would put up your hand. Yes, because as a society, we have agreed to that. And same with as a researcher, I might say, those are all activities. But we can also look at it subjectively. Subjectively means that it's not the researcher or society that decides if something is leisure or not, but the person. So do they think that that activity is a leisure activity, whether it is the activity, how much time, or the experience that they're having? It really depends on their perceptions or judgments. So, for example, a researcher might say that curling is a leisure activity. So that's objective. But if they had asked me at 10 or 11 years old, is curling a leisure activity? From my subjective definition, I would say no. I've also had this happen to me as a researcher with surveys and older adults. For example, I remember the first time I did a survey with older adults, and I went around and did it face-to-face, collecting the information. And I had a list of, using a survey scale, of various physical activities, such as, walking and doing aerobics and such. And the main question that I got asked over and over again, because it wasn't on my survey, was, is sex viewed as a physical activity? Well, I was at first a bit taken aback. I was probably only 23 or 4, but I then realized, well, yes, it is. It is enjoyable. It is freely chosen. And it does have physical activity benefits. So subjectively, then it can be viewed as a leisure activity. Now I'm going to give one more example, and that is such as washing dishes. Most of any of us would not view washing dishes as a leisure activity. But as I've aged, and especially as I've gotten children, I really enjoy washing dishes now. And that's because I put my headphones on, I put podcasts on that I usually wouldn't get to listen to. And for that moment washing dishes, I can feel like I'm by myself and enjoying myself. And of course, no one bothers me in my family because I'm washing the dishes. They don't want to help. So again, might not be the best leisure activity, but objectively, we would never define washing dishes as a leisure activity. But if we ask participants, they might find these to be leisure. In this course, we're going to be talking a lot about different leisure problems, and these are things that can have negative outcomes. Leisure problems often take the form of barriers or constraints that might prevent people from engaging in the activity in the first place, or maybe just having a good experience while they're engaging. But participation in leisure or not participating can also result in many negative outcomes to the individual and to our society. For example, we have a real problem with leisure and work balance, especially in North America. We have the least number of holidays. We have the least number of paid vacations. And except for the US, we're one of the worst countries in the world that way. And as a result of this, we have what's happening is we have workaholism and, worry sickness. There is a lot of anxiety going on in our society, and that is because of a lack of leisure and work balance. You might not know the term latchkey kids. That was kind of an 80s term, but that was as a result of, in the 60s and 70s, women going back, going to the workplace more, having two parents working outside of the house. And that resulted in a lot of kids who would be coming home from school and needing to open the door themselves, latchkey. And these children then, we had some problems where there was lack of supervision, and they participated in activities maybe that weren't as beneficial. And that's why we now have a lot of after-school programs. We even have leisure problems, let's say, with tourism. Tourism is very important. It's important socially, culturally, and politically and economically. But yet, it can exploit environments and cause problems. We might have problems, let's say, gambling. For example, when I first moved to St. John's, there was a report that came out from Bell Island. And it was absolutely extraordinary, the amount of money, the percentage of their income that people were spending on gambling. Well, a solution to that is perhaps that there wasn't enough recreation and leisure and social services in that community. And obviously, we also can have purple leisure, which a deviant leisure is another term. So these are things like could be vandalism, drugs and alcohol, things that might not be necessarily always good for us. And again, that's also in the eye of the beholder. So in this course, and also in your very first reflection activity, we're going to be looking at these different leisure problems. How would you approach this problem? Is there really a problem, and what is actually going on? We're going to be thinking about how can we maybe use social psychology theories and approaches to look at these various societal or leisure problems. And we have to think, can it be studied with social psychology? So to look at that, a lot of, not everything can be applied with science or social psychology. So we have to look at, can science be applied in the scientific method, and is it a question that can be answered? So science then is obviously the application of the scientific method to answerable questions. In this class, we're really focusing on how science is used to answer these social psychological questions as they relate to leisure. We'll be talking a little bit about, the scientific method. How do social scientists measure these study these types of behaviors? And the scientific method then is a way of making observations and gathering in a systematic way. And that's really the difference then between the armchair psychologist and the social scientist. It's not just they're both observing behavior, but the social scientist is first of all applying theory, and then also studying the behavior systematically. And we also have to look at these social psychological questions, can they be answered? There's obviously some questions that can't be answered by the scientific method. Think of things like philosophy, art, literature, religious studies. Anything that really involves a lot of values or morals. Those things are difficult to study with a scientific approach. So we're going to be talking in this class about the different social psychological ways of looking at these types of problems and behaviors. And there are three different approaches that I'm going to go over each of these three one at a time. These are different views of how to understand and predict people's behavior. And there are really three types, and they differ according to the, how they view as what's the most important factor for explaining behavior. So the situation approach, which is also called the stimulus response approach. And this is really coming from, if you've taken psych classes, from, B.F. Skinner, and it's really looking at behaviorism. So the stimulus response approach suggests that social situations or settings act as a stimuli to elicit a response or behavior, and that this predictable response occurs because it leads to either a positive or negative reward. So in this case, it's saying that we're not really worrying about what's within the individual, within the person. It's more of behavior as a result of a response to things that are happening socially or physically in the environment. In contrast, we can also look at the organism response approach. So that is really focusing on the person. So that's looking at differences among people can be explained by the individual, looking at their and assuming that people have enduring differences in their needs, motives, attitudes, and personalities. And that leads them to react differently in various situations. But of course, we know that people do react to their environment and social stimulus. So this is really then not recognizing the importance of situational and social factors. So that's why in this class, we're not looking at the situation response or the person response, but rather combining them together. So the situation by person. This is also called the stimulus organism response approach, and it's also called the interactionist perspective. And I believe I normally call it the interactionist perspective. So in this case, it's not the individual and the environment separate, but is a reciprocal reaction. So there are, the individual, how we are as people, that even influences how we perceive stimulus in the environment. And those stimulus then affect us, and that creates a response. So again, we're looking at the social setting, the environment, as well as the person. And that's really what the social psychological approach is about. So social psychology is the scientific study of behavior and experiences of individuals in social situations. Specifically, for example, most of the authors of your textbook, they are all developmental psychologists. And so, and obviously would have done a lot of social psychology as well. But they were interested in how to apply this then specifically to leisure. So social psychology of leisure is obviously focused on, it's a scientific study. So it's done in a scientific way with the systematic steps and also using theory. We're also focused on leisure behavior. So leisure that is either an activity that is freely chosen, that is enjoyable. And we're also looking then at the behavior and experience. So we're looking at what people do as well as what they feel and what they think. And we're looking at this then as individuals and in social situations. So I'm just going to briefly go over what would be on a exam or quiz You'll need to be able to identify what lifestyle is, or you know that term. Make sure you understand the two types of science, so physical and social science, and be able to discuss how social science is not an armchair science, but applies a scientific method. Make sure you understand the definition of leisure and the difference between objective and subjective definitions. So meaning objective is looking at, is how researcher or society defines what leisure is, whereas subjective means that the individual is defining what leisure is for themselves. You also need to understand and distinguish between the three approaches to understanding and predicting people's behavior. So looking at the stimulus response, organism response, or the interactionist perspectives. And remember that social psychology is focused on the interactionist or the stimulus organism response approach. On all of the exams and quizzes, there'll be often matching of definitions with terms. So make sure you understand lifestyle, scientific method, social psychology, and social psychology of leisure, as well as the definition of leisure are the key terms to understand in this unit.